Hello and welcome to Rates and Barrels. It is Friday, September 8th. I'm Al Melchior. I am here with Eno Saris. And this is our weekly weekend preview show. Just a few of these left. And, right off the bat here, I'm just going to confess that I lied. I lied about the date. For you, if you're listening to this right when it comes out, it is in fact Friday, September 8th. We are recording this a little bit early on Thursday the 7th. So there are a handful of Thursday night games that I'm sure they'll produce some news. It'll be a little too late for us, but we got plenty to talk about without those games in hand. So we are going to take a look at the week's big news. We've got one big prospect for sure coming up, maybe one or two others that are on the way, and the usual preview of hitters and pitchers to target, and a big list of two-start streamer candidates, and a little bit of bullpen news. So lots to get to here, Eno. So let's get right away to the big call up. Jordan Lawlar. He is coming up with the Diamondbacks. Spent most of the year with Double-A Amarillo, 263 average, 15 homers, 33 steals, and great numbers in Triple-A Reno for the brief time he was there. So my question to you, Eno, obviously this is a big deal. It's big news. How much do we maybe discount the Triple-A numbers given the environment there? Does it even matter? Do we just go and pursue Lawlar everywhere, regardless of what those numbers are? Or are you a little concerned that he's more or less leapfrogging AAA?
Well, one thing that I like is that ever since he had his injury, he's cut his strikeouts year over year as he's advanced through the minors. So I do believe that he can probably be an asset when it comes to batting average. It looks like he has a little bit of a lower launch angle, so he's not going to be a guy that kills you in BABIP, and he's fast. So I think this is a guy who, despite the projections, could probably hit 260, 275, 280. He kind of has a skill set for that. I also think he'll get on base at a decent clip. He's had double-digit walk rates all the way through the minors. So that's good news. I do think that power is an open question mark. We've had isolated slugging percentages for Jordan Lawlar all the way from like 140 up to the current 250 in Reno. And the best ones have usually been augmented by a nice park situation. I see a 108.6 max EV in AAA and a 33% hard hit rate with a 47% ground ball rate. I'm just using those to kind of approximate what would be a barrel rate in the major leagues. And I'm assuming it'd almost be like a 4 or a 5 right now. So I'm not thinking that power will be the greatest output for Jordan Lawlar. But for the D-backs, it makes sense. Everything's on the line this weekend with a series against the Cubs, who are ahead of them in the wild card race. He's better than Nick Ahmed. He's better than Geraldo Perdomo, probably. And there is the chance that he does hit for some power. I think if I was, guessing a true talent full season where Jordan Lawlar is right now, I'd consider him like a 275, 15, 30 guy, maybe 15, 25 guy. Obviously helpful in most categories, but not as helpful if you need homers down the stretch.
Right. And just that combination prorated to a full season, that to me sounds like a 12-team mixed league kind of guy.
Still useful in all leagues, yeah.
Somebody should be pursued. If we're saying all leagues, that would include 18, 10 team. And I've talked about this before, but my philosophy with that is when you have somebody with such a high ceiling and you're talking about really shallow leagues, I don't see an argument to not pursue them there because they get off to a slow start. If you've got a stacked lineup that maybe they don't crack it this coming week, those players are easily replaced on waivers. So
I have a 12-team league. It is sadly sort of a hybrid with keepers. So Lawlar is not out there for me. But in this 12-team league, I am currently nursing along Jeremy Pena and Willy Adames to the finish line, and I'm in second. And I would love the ability to bid on Jordan Lawlar to drop one of those. I think I would probably drop Pena first because Adames at least shows the power. But could he outproduce Jeremy Pena the rest of the way? For sure.
Yeah, no, that totally seems reasonable. I think that, those are good comparisons too, because those are both players that probably aren't in a lot of 12-teamers, but it's kind of on that fringe. So I think Lawlar is certainly a better candidate to have in leagues than the players that you mentioned. And I mentioned at the top, maybe a couple of other prospects coming up this weekend as well. And one is a result of an injury situation that's not entirely clear just yet, but Adolis Garcia left the Rangers game on Wednesday against the Astros, trying to make a catch, injured his right knee. And so the word from Evan Grant of the Dallas Morning News is that Evan Carter may get a call up. And like Jordan Lawlar, he has spent most of this season at the AA level, put up some nice numbers at Frisco, 12 homers, 22 steals, a 284 average, a 132 WRC plus. So if you're not overwhelmed by the counting stats relative to the league, Carter did quite well, and a little time at AAA as well. So first of all, have you heard any updates on Garcia, maybe that I missed in the last hour or so? And where do you think Carter belongs if he comes up?
I have not. I saw the injury in real time. My kid was excited to watch a divisional matchup, so we were watching that game together. And he tried to make a catch at the wall, if I'm understanding the right situation, and he landed awkwardly on his knee, and he stood there for a while. We thought he might even come out of the game. I think he finished the game, but he's now, it seems like he's hurt. Carter is a favorite of mine in OBP leagues, in on-base percentage leagues. Evan Carter is a guy who's carried a 400 plus on-base percentage all the way through the minor leagues. And I love his ability to make contact and take walks. It's not quite Mookie Bettsian, but it's reminiscent of that in terms of higher walk rates than strikeout rates at some of the levels. And so I'm pretty excited about him in those terms. 106 max EV this year in AAA, and it's only 39 plate appearances in, so that's not everything, but it does line up with again, question marks about his power. He's more a guy that'll get on base and run than he is necessarily going to come up and hit a bunch of homers. I mean, he spent all year this year in the minors, 500 plate appearances, has 13 homers for it. So it's not a package that is going to produce the kind of outcomes that Adolis Garcia did, but it is nice for Rangers team to have somewhat of a worthy replacement for Garcia if he needs a blow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Given that the Rangers need to compete and get into that postseason picture, this move would make a lot of sense if Garcia is going to be out for any period of time at all. And then there's a third prospect that we may see. It sounds like we are going to see him not really on the same level in terms of Lawlar or Carter, but Davis Daniel, report from the Athletics, Sam Bloom, is that he is going to be called up before Thursday night's game against the Guardians. So again, those of you listening on Friday, this will certainly be confirmed for you. It does sound like it's going to happen. And there's a TBD currently as we speak here for the Angels starter. So Daniel could very well be making his major league debut as a starter on Thursday night. So Daniel has missed most of 2023 with the shoulder strain. He's not been pitching in the upper minors, coming back from that injury. So, I mean, there's a lot here to kind of, I think, temper our enthusiasm, but do you see anything here if Daniel does go into the rotation that would recommend him maybe in 15-team leagues or something deeper?
This is a complete black box. I feel like, I mean, he has pitched 25 innings this year, 5 of which were at the complex, and the other 20 were at A-ball. Maybe if I had stuff numbers for his AAA last year, but that was weird because after double-digit swing strike rates, double-digit strikeout rates, he hit AAA last year and dropped to a 7K9 with a 9.9 swing strike, which if he was coming up off of that, I'd say I'm not that interested. He has recovered the swing strike rate, but he did it at A-ball, so I don't know if I'm touching this one. I'm just going to say that I will be very interested in his numbers once he pitches. I would much rather know what happened afterwards. Eric Longenhagen over at Fangraphs says that Daniel was up to 96 miles per hour at Auburn, but he was sitting 90 to 94 with a nice curveball before his elbow blew out. So now we have TJ in April of 2019 and Shoulder in 2023. So, in terms of dynasty, there's a lot of iffiness there with the injuries as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, but something to monitor. And again, maybe you all listening have had a chance to even check him out on Thursday night. So, not quite the Prospect-palooza that we had at the
Well,
roster
this late in the
expansion
season, I
deadline, but
guess. Yeah.
but it's still something. It's, I don't know, going into September and seeing big name prospects like Jordan Lawlar come up, pretty exciting, I think.
We could also count a young starter who's on the cusp, sort of losing his prospectdom, but there's a Marlins guy coming up that you could almost count as part of Prospect-palooza in Edward Cabrera, who's suddenly, I think, a full starter. I know that he got used for 4 innings in the Dodgers game, but that same day they got the news in Miami that Sandy Alcantara has a forearm strain and is out for the rest of the season. So I can't really see how they're going to do anything but start Edward Cabrera every start out.
Yeah, I think they really kind of need to do that. And this sort of forces us to jump ahead a little bit, because like I said at the outset,
Sorry about
we've
that.
got no. This is a good thing. That there's a very lengthy list of 2-start streamers, and Cabrera definitely belongs in that. And with his first start back up, really an excellent outing. Only 4 innings, though, but still, I'd be willing to overlook that. It was against the Dodgers, and granted, they've been scuffling a little bit lately, but maybe give the Marlins a little bit of credit in that. And just a fantastic outing for Cabrera against the Dodgers. And then for next week, he lines up at the Brewers, then at home against the Braves. So the Brewers one I kind of like, but that's clearly a mixed bag. So would you roll with Cabrera in 12-team leagues, which is probably where you'd be able to pick him up at this point?
Yeah, that Brave start is a rough one, but the one nice thing is at least it'll be in Miami. I do believe in Cabrera's stuff as top shelf, and maybe even willing that the Braves do sometimes only score 2 or 3 runs, so that's possible. What I do like after that is he gets the Brewers again, and then he gets the Mets, and I think that those are good matchups. The Brewers game is in Miami. So, I mean, if it's daily leagues, he's got to be gone off your wire now because I'd start him in all those games except for the Braves. If it's in weekly, we may find some other guys that are 2 starters that we like better. But in terms of stuff, I'm there. I think he's improved his locations. His locations have been above average over the last month.
And that's really, really important with Cabrera, because like when you talk about his starts being at Marlins Park, for some pitchers, it's, that's a very encouraging thing. It's like, okay, they can keep the ball in play and minimize the damage that way. But Marlins Park doesn't necessarily help Cabrera when he's wild. So the location being improved is really, really key for him. So it's an interesting 2-step for him. And while we're on the Marlins here, Jorge Soler has finally been placed on the IL. His absence so far, when he was day to day, created some playing time for Xavier Edwards. Just a little bit of moving around with Josh Bell going to DH, and then Luis Arias moving over to first base. And Edwards, I hate to say this, but it's just my first association is always with the Blake Snell trade, and I'll leave it at that, because Blake Snell had a very infamous comment about Xavier Edwards. But I will say it's sort of played out in Edwards' first appearances in the majors, a very, very low hard hit rate, but he's hitting for average, stolen some bases, and that's what you figure you can get from him if he does get some playing time, which it appears he's in line for right now.
To me, the story, I think, is more that some of the guys that had been kind of in and out of that lineup maybe more solidified. I'm thinking in particular of kind of Jesus Sanchez. Seems like he's an everyday starter now. And with Jazz Chisholm in center, you could do Brian De La Cruz, Jazz Chisholm, and Jesus Sanchez most nights. you know.
Mhm.
And so I think Edwards will get some play, but this is, I think, the best news is for Jesus Sanchez. I don't know, maybe it just means playing against more lefties, which may not be great for him. But I do think that's more chances to hit a home run. And why do you have Jesus Sanchez in your lineup except for chances at hitting a home run?
Of course, Blake Snell would disagree, but that's another matter for another day. Let's go back to the Angels because obviously there's a big story there, ongoing story with Shohei Ohtani, and again because we're recording before the Angels play on Thursday night. We won't know whether or not he started that game, but if he missed it, it'll be his fourth straight game out. Now with the oblique injury for Ohtani, which obviously he's not pitching again this year, not likely to pitch next year, but he, up until last few days, had been DHing regularly. So this is something, that is not to, make this personal on this show, but hurting me in a playoff matchup this week where I started Ohtani, maybe unwisely, because it was always a day-to-day thing to him, even before the oblique injury. So
Yeah, I feel like he could be shut down at any moment.
yeah. So if we roll into Sunday and there's still not any resolution here, do you just have to go ahead and bench Ohtani next week?
Yeah, I feel like the momentum here is towards, shutting him down for the season, especially because I'm speculating that he could possibly do an internal brace on the elbow, and that's a 6-month timeline. But if you think about it, just giving him even this month of September in that 6-month timeline gives him more time to pitch during the season next year. There are reasons for him to do it. I wonder if his agent is, I don't know if it's probably not legal, but and I'm not suggesting he's doing something illegal, but there's got to be some way to kind of figure out what the market will bear. Will it be a 1-year pillow contract, in which case all you're trying to do is play well enough to get a $20 million, $30 million contract for 1 year, and then prove that you can pitch by the end of next season, in which case the 6-month timeline doesn't matter. So there's a lot of things going on in Ohtaniville right now, especially centered around what he wants to do. And number one thing is he wants to do is play. So there's things pulling him in every direction, but I just think at some point somebody will tell him he has to shut down.
Yeah. Well, I think that is the wise assumption to make at this stage. And obviously, when I talk about it rolling into Sunday, that's another few days there. So that's not a good situation either way, whether he's officially shelved for the season or there's limbo for basically a whole week. Neither situation is very encouraging. So just a couple more items here. Gary Sanchez has a fractured right wrist resulting from a hit by pitch on Wednesday. And so his season appears to be done. And meanwhile, Luis Campusano, he's been getting, I guess, roughly half the playing time behind the plate. I would assume that this means a bigger role for him. And Campusano's done all right in this somewhat limited playing time. So as somebody who's
I'm
not
pretty
very widely
excited about
rostered,
him.
yeah.
I've watched him, and I'm really surprised by the amount of contact he's making. There were some iffy whiff rates in his debut, and in some parts of the minors. He's definitely not a patient guy, but there are a lot of players that kind of take this high hit tool, always swinging approach and take it to good heights. So the barrel rate's pretty decent. The max EV isn't amazing. But when you're talking about catchers, the bar is always way lower. And in terms of like even his projected 17% strikeout rate, that would be like second or third best among catchers. So I see this as one of the rare catchers that can give you batting average. And could he do something like Keibert Ruiz has done this year with a 260 average and 15 homers, 16, 17 homers next year? I think that's totally possible.
Yeah. And that's a good comp, a useful comp for us, because it seems that whenever on the show, whether it's you and me or DVR and me, we talk about catchers, usually the discussion is, are they going to be a second catcher in a 2-catcher league? Because very rare is the case that somebody just comes onto the scene or inherits playing time. It's like,
he's
they're going
right
to be
in between the two, I think.
He's going to be your
a
number one
back end
catcher,
number one, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that clearly does put him in the number 2 catcher category. So that's good news
Oh,
for a lot
that
of
puts him in
people.
the number 2 for you.
I
I
think
think
so.
Ruiz is a back end number 1, and Camposano probably slots behind him just because you don't know. You know more about Ruiz than you do. I think we're
Yeah.
talking sort of 12 through 15 anyway, right?
Okay, and I was going to say, when I use that 1 versus 2 catcher, that totally ignores whether we're talking 10 teams, 12 teams,
Yeah,
15 teams, 20 teams. So, yeah, I think in certain instances, Ruiz, you're right, would be that number 1 catcher, low end, but would
yeah.
be there in Campisano because of the playing time uncertainty and the production uncertainty, I think does slot in
Right.
behind. So, just one other item here, something that's again been sort of an ongoing story for the last several weeks on this program is the Orioles rotation. Cole Irvin going to the bullpen. Now, the thing that's a little bit of a twist here is that that's been anticipated because John Means' return is imminent, but the Orioles are going with a five-man rotation for now. So that leaves John Means' role and arrival time a little bit unclear. Does this change anything for you, or is it still safe to assume you think that Means is going to be in that rotation and needs to be added where he can be outside of maybe some shallow leagues?
I mean, this rotation also has Kyle Gibson in it, so it's not like they can't move somebody else out.
Yeah, that would be my assumption, actually, whether it's Gibson or Dean Kramer,
I
who's,
think what you
yeah,
do if you're the Orioles from a real life strategy standpoint is you make Gibson and Irvin the guys, like if you are trying to win in order to win the division, right? Because that could get
yeah,
tight. I would use Irvin and Gibson in like the 4th inning or the 5th. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
bring them in to be that bridge to the 7th, especially since you lost Bautista and everybody moved up a chair. That makes the 6th inning more vulnerable. So if they can pitch the 5th and the 6th, you could ask Flaherty to go out there, throw as hard as you can for 3-4 innings. We're going to take you out early. Sorry, dude. We got to win all these games. Yeah.
That
And
makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it makes me wonder if that's what's with this sort of weird timing with them going to a five-man rotation. Makes a lot of
yeah, I
sense.
do like what happens when you play the schedule game, like who's where. Urban was supposed to be the spot where Means took his schedule, right?
Right.
And
Because I think they
what
were,
day was that going to be?
yeah, because they were, I think, at least at one point lined up on the same days.
Yeah, I've got a pitching probables from MLB. And for tomorrow, is there a game today for them?
I don't believe so, but I can.
No, there isn't. So then Friday, it lists Bradish, and Saturday, it's got Flaherty. Sunday, it's got Grayson Rodriguez. Well, so these are all the guys we know. Monday, it starts with the TBDs.
Yeah.
So
So, yeah, what I get,
we'll learn,
yeah,
and that'll suck too because that's when you're picking somebody up for it. Sunday night, you got to decide. Hopefully, we get more information. I would just say that some of this is, not so important because I don't think Gibson is rosterable in a lot of leagues. He would have to be a 2-starter, although I guess if he's that TBD guy, he could be a 2-starter. I wouldn't basically depend on anybody on the back end of this to be a great 2-starter. Even if Means is scheduled for Monday, they call him up for Monday and they say, oh, he's pitching Monday, and that makes him a 2-starter. Do you think he'll pitch much more than like 6 or 7 innings for the week?
yeah,
So
that's a good point. And so I'm looking at some probables as well. So the way these are lined up, and I agree, you have to really take this with a big grain of salt. Is Dean Kramer and
on
Gibson
Monday.
would both, yeah, they'd be Monday, Tuesday, but yeah, I wouldn't feel great
And
about that.
on the Sunday, Means that he'd make another minor league start. So he's making one during this week. So he could be activated Monday or Tuesday. I kind of think Kramer has risen above. So if you do want Kramer for what's the schedule then? It would
It's
be
Cardinals,
Cardinals at
Rays.
home. And see, that's
It's not great.
it's not great. I don't think that I'm running to get Kramer there, especially given what might happen.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. All right, well, let's pivot back to some hitters, and not really a long list. In fact, this is going to be sort of a revisiting of a lot of names that we've talked about in recent weeks. But I want to go back to the big names from about a week ago on this show, Jason Dominguez, Ronnie Mauricio, and I'm going back to them first of all because they've both performed better than I would have necessarily expected, especially Dominguez. And they're both out there. Mauricio, especially, he may even be in some not 15 team, but maybe 13, 14 team leagues. And they're both out there in some 10s and 12s. So obviously based on the results, you would make a play for them this week. But we've also seen lots of times where very good prospects come up initially and do great. And then things kind of catch up with them. So do you see any risk at all?
I'd see a little bit with Mauricio. Just because I like Jason Dominguez's approach to the plate better. Ronnie Mauricio's swung at 47% of the pitches he's seen outside the zone. I have to feel like, and he's also hit 69% ground ball, which is not nice this early in his career, and also maybe not super meaningful 19 plate appearances in, but still, those are two signs where I'm like, man, I feel like this guy can be pitched to. Plus, his projections aren't as nice. So if I'm choosing between the two, it's Dominguez. If I'm choosing between two for careers, it's Dominguez. Yeah. I'm not saying that Mauricio has no chance. Mauricio does hit the ball super hard and has good legs. So I do think that he will be a contributor. But I also think there's going to be some bumps in the road for a guy that has some flaws in his approach.
Yeah. So you mentioned legs, 3 steals already in just 5 games, 421 batting average, but that's obviously extremely BABIP driven. Like you said, not much power, not much launch angle there for Mauricio, and yet some results that have been helpful for those who have started him this week. So I do agree. It's kind of a no doubter that if Dominguez is out there, pick him up wherever you can. And then a few other players who they're kind of on that same fringe, like probably out there in your 12 teamers, but not necessarily. JP Crawford, who's really broken out in the latter part of the season. David Schneider, who's sort of carrying the Blue Jays offense at this point, strangely enough. And Mitch Garver, who I'm just always surprised each week when I look at roster rates that he's not more widely rostered. So is it time for Crawford, Schneider, Garver to just be graduated to shallower leagues at this point?
Crawford's kind of boring. I like him, and he's my shortstop in AL Labor, and we're trying to push. We're second or third every other night, but and I'm happy that he's doing this. And I think he's played well, but what's he going to do the rest of the season? Maybe hit for an okay average, maybe hit 1 homer, maybe steal 1 base. Schneider, on the other hand, is trying to pull everything in the air. And while there may be some ups and downs to this in the future, where we've seen his batting average yo-yo in the minors, and when you hit this many fly balls, I get it. But he also does not swing at pitches outside the zone. And this approach really can lead to homers in bunches. So if I was looking for homers in that threesome, I would pick up Schneider in a second. In fact, I know his strikeout rate is high. This is the kind of guy that I would bet on over a struggling. Like if I was still nursing Tim Anderson along, hoping for him to hit to his projections, David Schneider would be an easy pickup for me.
Yeah, and still, getting regular play, obviously, with players out for the Blue Jays hitting in the heart of that lineup. So a lot to like there with
I think
him.
Also, even when they get fully healthy, I'm not sure that he sits anymore because they've needed offense, more than anything. And then B, it's not like second base was super solidified. You can play Merrifield in the outfield, and you could pretty much give Schneider second base and move Merrifield into a platoon with Kiermaier, and into a virtual platoon if you want to move Varsho over to center or whatever. But, it's not like Cavan Biggio or Santiago Espinal or Whit Merrifield has been playing so well that David Schneider can't play.
Absolutely true. No argument there. So those players, none of the ones that we mentioned are likely to be around in your 15 teamers or 14 teamers. So not necessarily helpful to think about them there. But I've got a few players who are pretty broadly available. And one, a little bit of a surprise to me, Noelvi Marte. On the one hand, a little bit of a surprise. And on the other hand, I mean, he's not been overwhelming at the plate. And then when he first came up, there was the question of where's there even going to be regular playing time on that
I think
Reds.
isn't that still kind of a question? You've got, people asking Joey Votto, like if he's going to come back or how he feels. Steer came back, and Encarnacion Strand is there. Matt McClain is the guy who we're waiting on.
Right.
But he said another 2 to 3 weeks. That's news I hadn't seen. So that means Marte might be safe for another 2 to 3 weeks. Okay.
Getting close to end of season at this point.
I think Marte's an interesting pickup. Again, he's a little bit Mauricio-like, but he has a better plate approach, doesn't swing at everything, hasn't quite gotten to his max power, over and over again, but it's in there. And there's, Chris Welsh, and I've had some discussions about this where there are people who disagree vehemently about how good he is. And I could see that because, he's hit a ball 115.6 already. That's amazing. He's never had an ISO above 200 at any level in the minor leagues except for rookie ball. So that's a disconnect for me. Like, what's going on there? He's not getting to that max power enough. And I wonder what the mistake is there. Also, like, he has stolen bases, but I'm a little surprised that he's had 5 in the major leagues, given that he seems more like a 15 to 20 guy in the minors. So, there's some question about how good he is, but he's going to play some games in Cincinnati. He's playing regularly, and he has that massive raw power, and he's stealing bases. So I think he needs to be owned everywhere.
Yeah. I don't know about super shallow leagues, but definitely, 15 teamers where he's out there, not maybe broadly, but he is. I'm surprised he's out there as much as he is in even some of those deeper leagues. So definitely needs to be picked up there for sure. And then going even a little bit deeper, Nick Martini, he's been sort of a staple on the show the last couple of weeks because he keeps surprising us both with the playing time and the production. And then a player I think I brought up last week, but I think it bears bringing him up again because nobody's really picked him up, is Nelson Velasquez, who's getting some run and some power production with the Royals. So Martini, Velasquez, where do they fit in fantasy wise?
I don't know if I can get behind Martini. I mean, they claimed an outfielder, then they seem to have so many outfielders. It's like I don't know that I can really figure out the playing time situation in that outfield. Martini has come off the bench for some of his games, if you look closely at his game log. So I don't know if I'm fully a supporter of him. Nelson Velasquez, on the other hand, I think is starting every day. And I do wonder if the scouting report's going to catch up to him. I mean, for Chicago, the teams that saw him regularly found a way to kind of minimize his power and maximize his swing and miss. But obviously in Kansas City, that hasn't been the case. I wonder if it's sort of a lag time on his scouting report. At the same time, I don't care. I think we're getting into the YOLO part of the season. If I need homers, where else am I going to get them? This is a guy who's producing them in bunches. And most of my leagues, Schneider's not there. Velasquez is a budget level Schneider if you need.
Yeah, and I like that categorization. And of the 3 deeper league options that we're bringing up, Velasquez is definitely the one. If you've got a categorical need for home runs and maybe RBIs, I think he's the obvious choice, given that all 3 could be available. So let's get on with the pitching portion of the weekly breakdown here, And as I said, there's a lot of 2-start options. We mentioned Edward Cabrera. So I'm probably going to lump some of these together because, like I said, there are a lot. So, let me just start with a one-off here. Brady Singer, he's got, or at least projects to have, a road start at the White Sox, which whether it's home or away, I just like them as a matchup. I think most people do at this point. But then he finishes up at home against the Astros. So very much a mixed bag there for Brady
The
Singer.
Astros have scored the most runs in baseball in the last month.
Yeah, well, yeah, they've been scorching for a while. So is that scary enough to not take the plunge with Singer, say, in a 12-teamer?
Yeah.
All right.
Honestly,
Well,
yeah, because I don't like his talent that much. So
okay. Well, then that's a bad combination. We've got a couple of Red Sox options here. And James Paxton, I'm not sure about this, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised if he was on the most dropped list. I think he is there given his run lately. Cutter Crawford. The matchups don't sound, based on history and what we're kind of used to, the matchups don't sound great, but a couple of teams that, aren't
they
what they
haven't been
used to be
scoring as
offensively
much.
with the Yankees and the Blue Jays.
I don't know. The Yankees did show recently they were a little bit revitalized. They've changed their lineup. They aren't even what they were 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And Toronto, at Toronto, I know that Park is playing a little differently this year, but I can't circle these names.
All right. Well, let's go one down the list, and this is gonna be a tough one too, because
at Colorado,
Jordan Wicks at Colorado, then at Arizona. That one I don't mind too much, even with Jordan Lawlar in the lineup. But Jordan Wicks, first of all, just what's your general impression of what you've seen from him so far?
Wicks is interesting because his best two pitches are cutters and changeups, and those are ones that my model does struggle with a little bit. At the same time, when I encounter a situation like that, I just want more sample to really believe. And it's not like he comes with huge prospect pedigree or anything. So, in the case of somebody like Brian Bayo, who had more prospect pedigree, and my model said, his changeup wasn't that good, I was able to say, well, the model doesn't love changeups, but his changeup's performing well, and the prospect hunters loved him. I'm going to give him a nudge in my ranks, and I'm going to believe in him more. I don't necessarily have that with Wicks.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It wasn't on a lot of our radars just a few weeks ago. Clark Schmidt, he's been kind of a tough one this season because earlier on was getting a lot of swing and miss, but not great results. Better results the latter part of the season, but less swing and miss. And then he starts at the Red Sox, which is not great, but then at Pittsburgh. So really a tough one here, I think, to read.
I think this is a little bit better than the one so far. I don't know that I'm rushing to circle him here. But I did want to check really quickly. I've tried to I have a mailbag coming out tomorrow, and I wanted to look at some of the pitchers all the way through. I have a Detroit at Boston Pittsburgh. Does that mean he's starting tonight, Clark Schmidt? Or
I don't believe so.
Maybe he just started against
just
Detroit.
Did, yeah. So
okay,
that
I gotta get rid
Boston
of that,
start is his next.
So at
start.
Boston, at Pittsburgh. And then he finishes Arizona possibly, and then at Toronto. So, I mean, if the calendar worked differently, I would love that at Pittsburgh, Arizona combo. So, there's some interesting things going on in this, schedule where I wouldn't necessarily want him at Boston, but I might grin and bear it, like I said. And then if you do grin and bear it, you might get him for Arizona the next week and be happy with that.
Okay. All right. So looks like maybe he is the leader in the clubhouse up to this point. Jose
this
Quintana.
Next one's my favorite.
Okay, yeah, home starts, so you got to like that for Jose Quintana,
Love
Citi
that.
Field. And then the matchups, I mean, I don't know what to call the Reds at this point because they're not at full steam. They're not producing like they did probably a couple months back. So I'm not sure if they're a good or bad or medium matchup at this point, but you got the Diamondbacks and the Reds at Citi Field for Quintana.
Yeah, I'll take that. I love that park. He's not my favorite pitcher on this list by quality necessarily, but he's not in the bottom of that. And then the matchups I like the best.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start grouping together here. He's got a couple of pitchers who haven't always gone real long into games, but they've become staples in their respective teams' rotations. Pedro Avila and Zach Littell. And Littell's scheduled to start on Thursday night. So obviously you've got another start there to look at that we don't at this moment. But Littell's at Minnesota, at Baltimore, Avila at the Dodgers, but then at Oakland. So got to like that second start.
Yeah, and I think we can package these together with Hyun-Jin Ryu versus Texas versus Boston, and Dakota Hudson at Baltimore versus Philadelphia. Because they're all kind of guys that won't go deep. Hyun-Jin Ryu is stuck at 5 exactly. I, in fact, am amazed by how exactly at 5 he's gone. I think he's gone exactly 5 in every start. So that it's hard sometimes to get a win, especially if you're going against Texas and Boston. You only pitch 5 innings. You feel like those games will be decided in the 6th and 7th.
Yeah.
So I don't think you're going to get a win there. Littell doesn't go deep. Avila doesn't go deep. Hudson doesn't go deep. I'm going to take the pass on all of these guys if I have better options. This does smell to me a little bit like what happens in your deepest of leagues, like your main, if your main event in NFBC or something, you might be looking at something like this. And in that case, I guess I would grin and bear it and take Littell.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, but I was also thinking that on the whole, with these 4 pitchers, the matchups are not that great.
No.
And so if this is a situation, DVR brings this up a lot, and I think it's helpful because some people play in daily league, some people play in 2 lineup setting points a week. Yeah. And for the Avila at Oakland, I would not want to miss. But coupled with the Dodgers start, I'm probably going to pass.
Yeah, that's why I say Littell, like neither one of those is the worst of the options and neither one of them is the best. You know what I mean? And like talent-wise, he's probably the best or second best, and matchup-wise, he's like second best. So I'm just going to take the guy who's second best talent, second best matchups, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't believe ever in Dakota Hudson. He's got bottom shelf command. They don't let him play that long. He doesn't get strikeouts. Will the Cardinals get a win against Baltimore or Philadelphia? So I don't like that at all. Ryu's team might get wins in those, but I don't think with him going 5 innings, he's going to get the win. So Littell's my guy.
All right. Well, we've got 3 at the end here, and I did put these in an order that's approximates my preference, but it sounds like we vary a little bit, and you kind of like this middle group maybe a little better. But at the bottom here, we've got Ryan Nelson at the Mets, and then at home against the Cubs. And Nelson too is pitching on Thursday night, so that may influence things. And then Andre Jackson at home against the Nationals and Yankees. So Jackson's got the home park, a good matchup I think against the Nationals. And then Ken Waldichuk. I just don't like the matchups at Houston, and then Padres at home, but anybody here that's worth the risk?
Yeah, I guess Nelson. Andre Jackson, has a good curveball. He has like 3 pitches that are close to average command, but I think you can see how that goes up and down. He just had a bad start in his last outing, and I don't know that Yankee start. Yeah, I know it's at home, but it bothers me. And what I like about Nelson is it's in New York, where that's a bit of a decimated lineup. They're running out the kids, and it's in New York. And then when he's home against Chicago, I actually kind of think what's interesting about that is now you're choosing among the bad options. And the only interesting thing about Nelson versus Chicago is that's such an important game for Arizona that I just can't imagine they let him out there to die on the vine. You know what I mean? Like,
no, absolutely.
It's not going to be a blow up. So what you're hoping is a good start against New York. He goes 5-6, gets a win, and then the bad is mitigated because even if he goes 2 or 3 innings and gives up 2 or 3 runs in Chicago, it won't be a 6-run thing. Like, there's no way they let him out there to give up 6 runs because they will have other guys ready. And their whole season's almost on the line. They need to beat the Cubs to stay in this wild card race. So I like Nelson a little bit there.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, and I like the thinking on that. All right, and then just a handful of one start options because I basically, well, three of them I like the matchups. One is just interesting, and that's Michael King. I don't like at the Red Sox, but he's starting. He went five deep. I think it was his last time out. So what? I mean, is he worth trotting out there against the Red Sox? And is there anything longer term that you like about King as a starter?
I did want to see here. I like King. He's kept his stuff plus up in the transition to starting, and he has a good sinker slider combo, and I think he has enough other than that to make it work. The problem is that you've got King down here for this at Boston start. The next two starts are Toronto, at Toronto, and then at Toronto. And I know they haven't been hitting that well, but that is not one that I circle. I love that King ends probably at Kansas City. So it depends a little bit on your stomach for risk, and how good you think King is, and how much you want that last start, and how much you think he can make it to that last start. Because we're talking about an innings guy, we're talking about a transitioning guy. So I like King's talent a lot. And if you're like in a dynasty or keeper league where you can pick him up and pitch him some and maybe keep him for next year, then I would do that. But in terms of matchups, those aren't great matchups.
Yeah. Well, he got the Astros the last time out and did really well, went five deep. He's got the Brewers this weekend, which I don't think that tells us a whole lot. But you could pick him up and stash him if that's something you can do in your league for that Boston start. Because I think if he fares well against Milwaukee, against Boston, those Toronto starts to me look a little less scary. So that's just one way maybe to approach it. And I just I'm sorry.
That could be it. Yeah. I mean, if you don't find those as scary, then don't worry about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then a few other starters. Actually, I think I said there were three others. Technically, I'll throw in a fourth one. Kyle Harrison gets the Guardians. That's not a great matchup for strikeouts, but Harrison, if nothing else, he's been getting the strikeouts since coming up. Wade Miley, weekly fixture on this show. He gets the Marlins at home. Griffin Canny gets the Tigers at home. And I'm going to toss in Kenny Rosenberg, who I think is strictly mono league and deep mixed league, but he also gets the Tigers.
Yeah, I like Kyle Harrison some. Somebody asked me why, his stuff numbers were higher in the minors than they have been in the majors, and it's a pretty easy answer. He has when he was in the minors, he was working on fastball command. I talked to him about this, and so they had him throwing fastballs and sliders. Now, interestingly, those are the pitches that he can't command as well, or the fastball isn't. So his location numbers were bad, his walk numbers were bad, but it does point to what we see sometimes, which is in the minor leagues are about development. And if the minor leagues are about development, you have him doing certain things that are better for his development than what he would do in order to win games. Right. Now he comes up, he wants to win games. He's throwing more slurves, he calls it, the breaking ball, and changeups than he did in the minor leagues. Now, Stuff Plus doesn't love those two pitches, but it might make him a better pitcher to throw the fastball, slider, curve, and change and be a 4-pitch pitcher. So I think all in all, to have two really good pitches that he does in the fastball and the slider and 4 pitches overall and not be showing as poor command as he was in the minors, I'm generally still positive about Kyle Harrison. I like that Cleveland matchup, and I don't know how good his matchups are beyond that. I mean, it's a bit of a guess with how stupid the Giants are, but I'm guessing it's at Arizona, which is good, but then he finishes it with at LA, home against LA. So whatever you think of Kyle Harrison, he's probably not a great stash for the end of the season.
All right, but you can be a streamer this week, and again, give some consideration to the others that we mentioned here. But I just want to pivot here to the final segment, the closer corner, and we've actually got a little something this week. So first of all, this is not really a super new development, but Tanner Scott does appear to be the Marlins' primary closer at this point, and yet he's still he's out there, 10, 12 teamers. In one of my 12 teamers where I lost Felix Bautista, I picked up Trevor May. Tanner Scott's still out there. So if you had that opportunity to swap out May for Tanner Scott, would you do that?
Yes. Yes, I don't know. I think the Marlins are playing well, and despite some injuries that we talked about today, I believe that they will win more games. And if you win more games, you can have more saves. So that's my thinking there. Also, I think that Tanner Scott has more stuff.
All right. So a very strong argument there for me to make a switch this weekend. And you too, if you're in a similar situation. A development in the Rays bullpen going back to the weekend, this past weekend, Jason Adam put on the IL with an oblique strain. Pete Fairbanks has just continued to get saves for them, but the Rays being the Rays, sometimes that's a team where you can go in deeper leagues for that second option and try to pick up a few stray saves. Robert Stevenson's really emerged as a very reliable reliever for them. Do you think that he'll maybe pick up a save or two?
I just did something really weird. That's crazy. I was trying to make a custom report and I just put like everything in. That is hilarious. How did I do this? This is so funny. On Fangraphs, you can do custom reports and I put like every stat in. So I can now scroll sideways from all the pictures on the Rays, but I'm like so deep in that I can't find who the name is anymore. So all right, I'm gonna sort by holds if I can find them. Where are the holds? My basic way of doing things is I get the stuff plus on there and I get the holds on there, because the most important thing is how a team is using you. And so holds are a huge metric, and I am stalling to try and find this in all of this mess that I've created. That is hilarious.
All right. Well, I think I could toss you a softball.
Yeah. How many holds? Oh, there's a holds. There we go. And it lost me on the 14. There we go. I've got it sorted by holds. Robert Stevenson. Yeah, that's my guy, I think.
All right.
Robert Stevenson. Sean Armstrong is a decent pickup too. He's got some holds. He has better stuff plus overall. And what I've found that's a little bonus for you in starting pitcher eligible leagues. He's starting pitcher eligible.
Yeah, that's not nothing.
Yeah, there's a lot of places where you can pick up Sean Armstrong and sneak some holds. I just did that today in one of my leagues. What up, Pitchfork crew? And I that's what I was thinking, was that Armstrong is going to be up a seat in that thing, and he's starting pitcher eligible. And on the days I don't have a starter in there, I can throw him in there and try to get some sneaks and holds in.
All right, excellent nugget. Well, we'll finish up on something. I think it's going to be an easy call, but the Rockies, it appears, has a change in closer, and so Tyler Kinley is the new pitcher in the seat there. Doesn't matter. It's the Rockies.
I can't do it. I mean, when they're good and they win some games, then like maybe I can grin and bear it. But they're the worst team in baseball, or second worst team in baseball. So what are they on pace to win in the next 3 weeks? Like,
yeah, 5 games, maybe
like 8 games. And then how many of those would have a save attached to it? Like 2 or 3. And then how many blowups do you have to take from your closer there to get those 3 saves? It'd be a lot of work for 3 saves.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I figured, but had to ask, so fair enough. All right. Well, let's just close this out, close the week out. And first of all, just a reminder that if you want to find Eno or me, we are on Twitter. You can find Eno at Eno Saris. I'm there at Al Melchior BB. And also you can now get The Athletic for a month. For $1 a month. You can get it for a month if you want, I guess, but you can get $1 a month.
Now it's $1.
We recommend the whole year. So, and you get all of Eno's work. You get the, at least for a short time, my weekly waiver column. What do you got coming up that people can to be reading?
I got a big mailbag coming up tomorrow. That's kind of fun. I did break down some of these pitchers and some ones we didn't even mention because I was looking at their full rest of season schedule, and I broke it down by, available in 30% of leagues and 20% of leagues. So that's part of the mailbag. And then some other ones, I had to pair a beer with all the pennant contenders. Some people might be mad at me for the words I wrote down, but I think it's all in good fun, and people hopefully will get a laugh out of it.
All right. Excellent stuff. So again, $1 a month for the first year. Go to theathletic.com/rates and barrels, all written out, rates and barrels. So that's going to be it for this episode and for this week. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will be back on Thursday.
Thanks for listening.